because you're asphyxiating, you're not getting enough oxygen. The point here is there's no known LD50 for cannabis. There's no known lethal dose. And yet we see people overdose on alcohol all the time. We see our young people who are out in sports overdosing on water. When I say cannabis is safer, safer than what? Safer than water. Because you can't smoke enough cannabis to kill you, but you can drink enough water to kill you. It doesn't kill brain cells. The monkey study that came out that you all heard about, this is your brain on drugs. They pumped the little monkey full of cannabis smoke and then measured how many brain cells were left. And they found dead brain cells, which is why we all heard from the 70s monkey study that cannabis kills brain cells. Well, we broke into the methodology. We just learned that word. We looked at what they studied. Because every time we tried to recreate it, that's called science, recreatable results, right? We kept noticing that it stimulated brain cell growth. It has neuroprotective qualities. So why is it we keep saying it kills brain cells when it actually protects them? Well, the truth of it is they forgot to add oxygen. Now it's been proven that a lack of oxygen kills brain cells. And when they pumped that little monkey full of marijuana smoke, they neglected to add oxygen. That's what killed the brain cells. Now I want to go back to this whole cancer thing. Cannabis does not cause cancer. Dr. Donald Tashkin has proven that cannabis does not cause cancer. In fact, in even human trial testing, it not only halts the progression of cancer, but seems to reverse it. And if I have time, I'll talk about how. But the important part here is that it's not cannabis that causes the cancer, however your ingestion method. That might be a problem. Because if you're a fan of that little 2-inch metal pipe, and you've been smoking out of it all these years, you're huffing lighter fluid, you're huffing ash, particulates, you are slow cooking the back of your throat. It's almost like basting. You swallow, you cook. It's one of the most dangerous ways to smoke cannabis. However, if you ingest it in an alternative way, the safest way to smoke cannabis is actually through a joint. More so than bongs. True story. A normal study did determine, Normal and Max got together and determined that joints were the safest way to smoke your cannabis. Now we already talked about why pipes weren't so good, right? Nothing to trap the ash, the tar, the particulates. Slow cooking the back of your throat, that does cause issues, I assure you. You're not supposed to slow cook yourself over years. And huffing lighter fluid, when you say, oh, well, I smoke it, I get a little higher. Well, you get high by huffing oven cleaner, too. It's not a good high, is it? No. Okay, so bongs. Bongs are popular. Yes, it helps trap the ash and the particulates that cause some of the lung conditions. The other thing about bongs, by the way, that they collect is your THC. THC likes to stick to the side of glass. And any of you that are using teas want to make sure that you make tea with a milk or a fat product rather than a water, because otherwise it's attracted to the glass instead of dissolving into what you're trying to drink, you at the end of the day. Now the reason, the biggest reason that bongs are one of the more dangerous ways is if you have lung conditions, it does introduce moisture. That could be a problem for some of you that have those medical conditions. But the #1 reason, those of you that love bongs, when was the last time you cleaned it?
Every day.
That's why they're so dangerous. It's what you're growing in your bong and then inhaling. Yes. The reason joints have been determined to be the safest way to smoke for cannabis is because you only light it one time. You don't have a constant heat source the way you do, okay, maybe 2 or 3 times because you let it go out, right? You do want to make sure that you're using natural papers, however, because if you're using the dyed papers or the glue, those are also chemicals that you could be ingesting. But the green screen is why it's so much safer. The cannabis that's ground in front of what you're smoking is actually slightly vaporized as you're smoking it. Y'all know that the roach is much stronger than the fresh roach, right? You're literally coating as you go with more cannabinoids and then being able to ingest them. The green screen traps a lot of the ash, the tar, and the particulates, and you don't have a constant heat source. But most importantly, it's disposable. So you're not reusing it and reintroducing bacteria, or let's just say cooties. You're not crossing it back and forth. Now the safest way to inhale to get the same titration or dose effect as smoking would be vaporizing. And I am very pleased to see around this Hemp Expo you have done a fantastic job at Hemp Con of getting a lot of vaporizing booths out there. This is the safest alternative. And those of you that aren't sure about this whole vaporizing thing, what you're basically doing, because cannabis, you've got all these hundreds of beneficial constituents, they all have a boiling point, each and every one of them. So what you're doing is you're using a heat source to boil away the beneficial constituents and then trap them either in a bag or with the whip, and you're inhaling the beneficial constituents without ever getting it hot enough to combust the plant matter. Now go out and smoke your lawn clippings. That's about what's left when you're done vaporizing, if you have a good vaporizer that's at the right temperature. The other is that if you're not sure of where your cannabis comes from, you can control the temperature of your vaporizer to prevent ingesting things like benzene, which does cause cancer. Sometimes you can find in these pesticides or different nutrients, if somebody is using Miracle-Gro, it's for ornamentals, not things that you ingest. You want to get stuff you would put on your spinach or your tomatoes, not on your roses. So some of the stuff that goes into cannabis, food grade materials, some of the stuff that goes into cannabis, if you're not sure of your source, if you vaporize, you can keep it below the temperature that boils these things away. So if you keep your vaporizer, say, below 390, you're square on stuff like benzene. You won't be ingesting that. You'll leave that in the plant matter. Those of you that aren't sure about how it makes you feel, there's a psychology behind this, I think. We've all been measuring how high by how big a puff of smoke comes out when we're done. So the psychology of a vaporizer is very difficult because instead of that big, heavy, thick, gray smoke that comes out of you and then goes down the hall and tell your kids what you're doing, or your next door neighbors, or the people in your apartment complex. With vaporizing, it's kind of more like a clear fairy dust. It just it's gone. It smells a little differently too. And those of you running around with the Iolite, little portable vaporizer, that bad boy's gone through 20 or so airports with me quite successfully. Excellent tool. So let's get back into the cannabinoid system. When we talk about the endocannabinoid system and the different things that it might affect, what we found is remarkable is that cannabis has both a curative and a palliative function. Now, every single pill that you have ever been prescribed is a palliative pill to ease your pain, to simply make you feel better. Those of you that have ever experienced, for example, neuropathic pain, neuropathy, those diabetics out there, people coming back from the war, phantom limb pain, we do not understand these pain receptors. We can't seem to speak to them. We don't understand what's causing the pain. We just know that the folks that are suffering from it can't stop feeling the pain. So we prescribe opiates. Unfortunately, opiates do not actually speak to the receptors for neuropathic pain. Remember we talked about that whole lock and key system? It's like using your boat key to try to get into your house. Well, eventually you can beat the door down if you try long enough, but you're never actually going to get the key into that lock. So all we're doing with opiates is drugging you down to the point where you just don't care so much. But the underlying cause of the pain is still very much present. Same with things like muscle spasticity. Your muscles, any of you ever get a leg cramp? It's like hell. Imagine having that leg cramp for 20 years. Imagine having that cramp all over your body for the rest of your life. And so these cannabinoids speak to the cause. We found out now that the endocannabinoid system is kind of the body's regulator. It's called homeostasis. Your body is simply trying to achieve balance. It's trying to reach normal. So those of you that aren't feeling well, that are just sick, you use a little cannabis, it doesn't make you high, it makes you normal. And normal is what a lot of us are trying to achieve. But we found that cannabinoids speak to the underlying cause of the pain. So they're not just palliative, it's actually curative. We talked about things that get out of control, like muscle spasticity. Well, what about things like Tourette's syndrome? Overactive brain cells, firing of brain cells. something you all understand, anxiety.
Next time we're
Firing out